Have you ever stood in front of a bottle of wine wondering, should I drink this now or should I save it for later? Why are some bottles supposed to be aged for 10 or more years before opening, yet others, you're supposed to pop that cork right away? It's confusing, and that's completely understandable. Wine ageability is one of the biggest mysteries for wine lovers because the truth is you can't just look at a bottle of wine and know if it will age gracefully or if it will fall flat on its face. Labels won't tell you, vintage dates don't always guarantee it, and even price tags can be totally misleading. Bottom line, only 3 to 5%. And some say even as low as 1% of all bottles of wine will improve with age. It's a true needle in a haystack. The secret, however, comes down to 3 invisible ingredients. And in this episode, I'm exactly what those elements are. And I'm going to share some practical tips so you can figure out if that specific bottle of wine is built to last or if it's better enjoyed tonight. Welcome to Everyday Sommelier, where we make learning about wine approachable, fun, and something you can actually enjoy. I'm your host, Kristi Mayfield. Think of me as your sommelier next door, here to help you cut through the complexity so you can enjoy every glass with confidence and learn wine your way. On a trip to Alsace several years ago, I had the opportunity to taste a few super aged wines, and I'm talking 50-year-old bottles. My first thought was, these are white wines. They are going to taste awful. But much to my excitement, every single bottle, even a 1969 Gewürztraminer, was unbelievable. It was mind-blowing. But here's the challenge. Most people assume wine can get better with age. You may fall into that same category, but not all wines are meant to age. In fact, the majority of bottles are designed to be opened within a few months or maybe a year. So why does this matter? Because holding on to a wine that's not meant to be aged can lead to sheer and utter disappointment, flat flavors, dried out textures, and money tossed down the drain. It leaves you second guessing your choices. So let's explore the key questions that are going to unpack the ageability problem and guide you to smarter and more confident decisions. What do we really mean when we say a wine can age? All wines have structure, and this structure has elements that build upon it. And this defines how a wine can either continue to evolve or how it can completely fall apart. Wines are composed of flavors and aromas, and then sweetness, acidity, tannins, particularly for red wine, alcohol, and body. In wine education speak, we shorten that to SATAB, S-A-T-A-B. And when all of these things are in play, a wine is balanced and delicious. But it doesn't necessarily mean that over time it will get better. Some wines, as they age, the flavors will start to meld. Let's talk about white wines in particular. These can transition from bright and fruity to nutty and caramely and ginger types of spices, dried fruit, even mushrooms. So think about that dried apricot with a little bit of spice and caramely nuttiness to it. Red wines transition from fruit bombs to jammy, dried fruits. They gain earthy components like composty forest floor, umami notes of mushrooms, and even different food flavors like chocolates and coffee. And in red wines, those tannins can go from grippy, astringent, and bitter. So think about grippy sandpaper on your tongue and transition into soft and velvety, smooth tannins. But why does this happen? What are those elements? The 3 secret ingredients to ageability in wines are acidity, tannins, and sugar. And that balance allows some wines to be totally age-worthy, while other wines, in fact, 95 to 99% of all wines, to be great right now, but will completely fall apart over time. Let's start off with high acidity. Certain varietals are naturally high in acid. They are tight, they are bright, and they will make your mouth salivate. This acidity acts as a natural preservative. It maintains that freshness, and most importantly, it continues to be a strong structural element. Without acidity, most wines can simply not improve over time. They will not age. When it comes to red wines and even some white wines, element number 2 that is necessary is firm tannins. In red wines, tannins will provide structure. Think of them like the backbone of a wine, holding all the other elements perfectly aligned. These tannins, when young, can be super grippy like sandpaper, but over time, they start to soften because the tannin molecules start to combine and become longer and softer. Tannins in red wine can contribute to its longevity. The third element is somewhat surprising. It's sugar. Balanced levels of sugar in sweet wines in particular, coupled with the other elements I spoke about, whether it's tannins and especially acidity, help be an additional preservative and allow wines to age for many years, even many decades. Sweet wines, dessert wines like sauternes or late harvest Rieslings that have super high levels of residual sugar can age for decades. Fortified wines, we're talking things like port and sherry and Madeira, where a neutral spirit is added, have a super high alcohol content that also allows these wines to last for many years. There are other elements that we also need to take into consideration. I just mentioned alcohol. In still wines, an average or moderate amount of alcohol, typically between 12% and 14%, is a very nice sweet spot for ageability. If there's too much alcohol, it can tend to speed up, put it on a fast speed train towards that wine degrading in the bottle. Antioxidants are also present in many red wines. Components like resveratrol and polyphenols. When you have higher concentrations of these compounds, that can contribute to aging potential because they do also act as natural preservatives for that wine. You often hear talk about this next element, which is complexity. And I know it's very hard to understand complexity, but when you think about multiple layers of flavors from fruits to spices to oak influences, all of those additional layers of complexity can develop even more depth, and greater complexity in wines that are ageable. But how does it feel when you think you have a wine that can lay down or age for many years and you save it? You're waiting for that perfect moment, only to pop the cork and find it is past its prime. You're frustrated. You're disappointed. You feel as though you've wasted money. And more importantly, you've wasted all that time waiting for that wine to improve, and it does not improve. In fact, it is dull. It is flabby. It is musty. It might even be over oxidized. It could smell like vinegar or wet cardboard. It can taste sour or bitter. It's absolutely undrinkable. When you have this experience, it is the most disappointing bottle of wine you've had in years. On the flip side, it is possible to open bottles too young because you open a bottle that has great aging potential. And when you open it too young, it can be unbalanced. The acidity might scream at you. The tannins might rip your tongue out. The fruit might be so overwhelming it tastes more like Welch's grape juice than a delicious wine. One element steals the show, and it's definitely not in a good way. So what common mistakes do you, as a wine lover, make when you're trying to age bottles of wine? Relying on myths. All Napa Cabernet is meant to age. All Bordeaux can age for 50 years. These are myths that don't apply across the board. There are many other elements to take into consideration, including the 3 key elements we spoke about earlier: acidity, tannins, and sweetness. Saving wines that aren't meant to age, or ignoring storage conditions and poorly treating wines that could potentially age. Now, if you've missed episode 44, where we talk about storage of wines, go back and listen to it because you'll get all the insider tips how to prevent poor storage from ruining that wine. And finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room: price. An expensive bottle of wine does not translate to age worthiness. Additionally, trying or assuming the wrong wine or varietal can lead to sheer and utter disappointment. So what are some great ageable wines? Cabernet Sauvignon in general has a high potential for ageability. And why is that? It has super high tannins and super high acidity that give it that natural structure and the potential to age for 10, 20 years. It can get more complex, develop notes of leather and tobacco. Nebbiolo is another varietal that definitely needs time aging, especially if you're talking about high quality wines like those found in the Barolo or Barbaresco regions of northern Italy. Nebbiolo has uber high tannins. They are super grippy, and when consumed too young, can completely overwhelm that wine. So the tannins need time to age and mellow and smooth out. But because Nebbiolo is super high in acid, it can continue to uphold the quality of that wine for years, developing lovely, rich flavors and complexity while allowing that tannin, instead of stealing the show, to become a supporting actor. The third red to consider for ageability is Syrah or Shiraz. It has a really robust structure that has high tannins, but also coupled with those antioxidants that we spoke about. And it gives it long aging potential. And these wines will continue to develop very complex, dark fruit flavors with a little bit of spicy pepperiness and sometimes that smoky undertone. Shiraz can age beautifully. So think Rhone Valley of France or Australia. The best white varietals for aging: first and foremost, Riesling, Riesling, Riesling. Riesling is the acidity bomb. It has such high acidity. German Rieslings, Australian Rieslings, Alsatian Rieslings. These wines can age for 10 up to 50 or more years. And as they age, the complexity becomes the story. Aromas of petrol, dried fruits. These wines with that bright undertone of acidity are delicious as they age. Chardonnay is another surprise. When from cooler climates where those wines have that natural high acidity, can hold their own for years to come. Many of the most ageable Chardonnays have also seen some time in an oak barrel. And I'm not talking the big oak and butter bombs. I'm talking about the slight tannins that derive from oak aging that enhance the ageability of those Chardonnays. They can transform the wines and give them that additional layer of complexity. Remember, Chardonnay itself is not complex. These wines will come from Burgundy or cooler climates. That's your key. Chenin Blanc is the third ageable white wine. It can produce super age-worthy wines from very dry, high acidity still wines to high residual sugar dessert wines. They get richer over time, more complex over time, and bring out honeyed notes the longer they age in the bottle. But again, even with those 6 varietals I mentioned, not every single bottle is created equally. So, what should you do to choose wines that will age well and will avoid disappointment? Let's look for those structural clues. And as we talk about wine, as we go shop for wine, we can learn to taste the elements of age. When I want to have a bottle that I can enjoy today, but I'm curious about what it tastes like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or longer. And I found a bottle that has all of the elements, the acidity, the structure with the tannins, and the elements that could potentially get it to age beautifully, I will buy 3 or more bottles. That is my recommendation for you. If you want to see how a wine will age over time, buy 3 bottles. Mark one to open in the next 3 to 5 years. When you open it, take notes. What did it taste like? What stood out? And how well did it transform? How well did those flavors integrate? Was it still balanced? Pop the cork on the next one, 7, 10 years. Do the same. Take notes. That third bottle, maybe 15 years. Compare these. Aging wines is not a sprint. It is a marathon. But by taking notes and seeing how those wines progressed, whether you're buying from the same region, the same varietal, or even the same producer, that will teach you some clues to get really sharp at finding ageable wines. So what's the big lesson? Wine ageability is not magic in the bottle. It isn't about guessing. It's about the 3 invisible but critical ingredients: acidity, tannins, and sugar balance. And without them, no wines will age well. And if you want to get it right every single time, here are my simple tips. First and foremost, taste for structure, not just flavor. It's not about the wine tasting good today. It's about having those structural elements that will allow it to hold up over the years. So wines with bright acidity, firm tannins, and if a dessert or fortified wine, having that balanced sweetness that's going to hold up and give it structural integrity for years to come. Number 2, don't save everything. Most of your wines are meant to be enjoyed young, and by learning the difference and popping those corks at the appropriate time, you're going to learn to tell that difference. So you're no longer wasting bottles by holding off too long, thinking it will improve over time. Number 3, and I love this one, start small and start with side-by-side comparisons. Get the same wine in different vintages, maybe a 2020 and compare it with a 2023 or 24. Nothing will show ageability like comparing a current release with something that has a few years of age on it, and taste how that wine has evolved and make notes for sure. 4th, invest in tools that will allow you to try small amounts, a little taste or a glass here and there of a wine to see how it's maturing without even popping the cork. Yes, I said it, without popping the cork. If you're curious, you definitely want to tune into next week's episode where I interview Coravins inventor Greg Lambrick. So these tips will allow you to understand when that bottle of wine you've been holding on to is in its prime. When you buy a bottle that you are not going to consume within the next week, month, or year, write on that bottle the best drinkability window. Whether you find that drinkability window online, you receive that information from the winery or the winemaker, or your favorite person at your wine shop. That way, you have that clue written right on that bottle, and you take the guessing game completely out of the picture. I have so enjoyed having you with me today on Everyday Sommelier, and if you're holding bottles in the back of that closet, in your wine refrigerator, or wherever you store them, wondering whether they're going to shine or fall flat, you now have the invisible markers that will give you the clues for true age worthiness in a bottle of wine. Share this episode with a friend that might have that quote unquote someday bottle that's collecting dust, and encourage them to listen and pop the cork at just the right time. Even if all the elements align and you've stored that wine absolutely in pristine conditions, there is no guarantee that what's in that bottle is going to meet or exceed your expectations. And when it comes for knowing which wines to enjoy now, which wines will reward your patience, there's no better way than to share it with a friend. And if you can relate to what we've talked about today, or if you've had that bottle that got away, take a moment, follow Everyday Sommelier, and give us a review. Tell us what that experience looked like by scrolling down in your Apple Podcast app, leaving a review. And if you're on Spotify, we would so appreciate your 5-star rating. And if you want to take that next step and continue on your wine journey with us, go to our website at wine-wise.com, WIZE, and get on our insider list. And in our next episode, we are diving deeper, not only into wine preservation, but more importantly, wine exploration with Greg Lambrick, the brain power behind Corvin. And until then, pop the cork of that bottle you've been waiting for and let us know if it's met your expectations and that it was truly a wine worth aging while learning wine your way.